Hello, viewers. Today is August 17th, 2024. I'm here to continue my discussions about the US presidential elections 2024. More specifically, I would like to discuss about the domestic policy agenda that Kamala Harris laid out yesterday and the kind of responses that she had gotten, both positive and negative, from the national media as well as from the Republicans. So just to recap, we did have a program about that yesterday, about what she had outlined, but I'll just give you a summary. She had called for the restoration of the $3,600 of child tax credit from the existing $2,000. And she also talked about giving a new child tax credit in the amount of around $6,000 for the newborn, so that the parents can take care of the new baby for the first 1 year for their expenses for the first year. And then she also talked about how she can provide some assistance to first-time homeowners for up to around $25,000 for the first-time homeowners. So all these programs are, of course, are going to be means tested, and they're going to apply only to low-income and middle-class families. As I mentioned yesterday, these programs are good, uh, and the country definitely would require something like this to help the low-income and as well as the middle-class families. But I did mention yesterday as well that she needs to come back and tell us exactly how she's going to pay for it. So we need to get more details, and that is what some of the national media are asking for now. And some from the Republican side are questioning her in terms of spending this kind of money at this stage. They are asking questions about the debt and the deficit, and which is why I'm saying some of their criticisms are quite valid. They have every reason to ask her for a detailed plan on how she's going to pay for it, because adding this to an already large deficit and subsequently it will get added to the debt is not going to be sustainable, and she needs to find ways to pay for these programs. I'm in full agreement with that, um, with that kind of an approach. And if the criticism from the Republicans are only on that front, I'm fine with that. But I also want to call them out on what they were doing when they were working with the White House when we had a Republican president. So to look at that in detail, I want to go back and look at it from a historical perspective on um, why both parties are equally responsible for the deficit and the debt situation that we are in today. Year over year, we are having increased deficit, and we are adding that money to the debt, and the debt is also increasing year over year. So for that, let's look at the election from 1992 onwards. So in 1992, when Bill Clinton was running against George Herbert Walker Bush, he ran on a platform of trying to fix the economy, and he said he was going to fix the economy in the sense that he's going to create more jobs. He's going to make sure that the middle class can live comfortably. So after he won and he took office in 1993, his first budget bill had two main components from my perspective. One is on the revenue side. On the revenue side, he had increased the taxes for the wealthy, the top tax bracket, from 36% to 39.6%. And then on the expenditure side, he called for a reduction in defense spending. In fact, he called for a reduction of more than 45 billion dollars more than what George Herbert Walker Bush proposed. And so he had a revenue component where he wanted to increase revenue, and he also had uh, a component to reduce spending by going after the defense spending. He also did cut some of other small programs, but the defense was the main program that he did cut significantly. Close to 35 billion dollars was the one that he had cut eventually after the bill was passed in the House. And remember that this was not an easy sell to the Congress. In fact, Al Gore, the then Vice President Al Gore, broke the tie in the Senate, and also they were looking for Senator Bob Kerrey from Nebraska, who was a Democrat, uh, to finally sign off on this proposal, on this budget bill, because he was not too anxious to support this bill. Remember that he was also one of the opponents of Bill Clinton during the primary process, during the Democratic primary process. So this bill was passed, of course, with a 50-50 Senate, with Al Gore breaking the tie in the Senate. But then what happened? A lot of people said that this is going to really kill the economy. We're going to have a huge job losses in the country, and this is not good for the country, and so on and so forth. And then some people from the defense said that, including Colin Powell, by the way, said that, cutting defense like this is not good for the country and for the national security and whatnot. But look at what happened. We had the best economy during those 8 years. Bill Clinton's presidency created more than 25 million jobs, and for the first time we were able to balance the budget, and we had a budget surplus for 4 consecutive years from the 4 consecutive years from the fiscal year 1997. So we had a budget surplus in 97 fiscal year, 98, 99, and 2000 as well. And the largest budget surplus was in the year 2000 fiscal year, where we had a budget surplus of $230 billion. In fact, out of that $230 billion, the majority of the surplus came from the Social Security. What do you mean by that? Social Security that year took in revenue close to around $563 billion or something like that. And then it spent close to around $415-16 billion in terms of payout to the recipients. So we had close to around $153 billion in excess money on Social Security alone. That is one of the reasons that Al Gore, when he ran for president in the year 2000 against George W. Bush, called for lockbox. What is a lockbox? He was saying that we have this excess money from Social Security, $143 billion. I want to put it on a lockbox, meaning I would like to use this only for Social Security purposes, that is paying to Social Security recipients, and not use it for any other government expenditure. That was his political platform, or a political message that he gave, to say that when he becomes a president, he is going to put that on a lockbox. And that was a huge thing. Then there was a lot of back and forth between the George W. Bush campaign and Al Gore's campaign. George Bush wanted to give a tax cut. Al Gore wanted to basically put this money on a lockbox. So we had, during that year, if you look at the Social Security, just to touch on the Social Security, we had a surplus of $143 billion or so. And then we had an existing trust fund of close to around $890 billion or so. So that was the first year where the Social Security Trust Fund had more than $1 trillion. So that was a huge amount at that time. So now, after that election, of course, George W. Bush won. And the moment he won is he just basically passed a bill which included a tax cut for the rich, which he wanted. He basically said that he wanted to pass that excess government money to the people, and he basically cut taxes across the board, actually, but he also reduced the taxes on the wealthy. So he touched the revenue aspect. So we are going to get less revenue, and he didn't rein in on any spending initiatives. So what happened was, you're going to get into a budget deficit scenario because of this. But then by the time he passed out this bill, and then 9/11 happened. When 9/11 happened, then obviously government needed to spend more money. We created a new department called Department of Homeland Security, and the national security needs to be beefed up. All of this were legitimate expenses. So the government spent money, and then George W. Bush went to war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and those war costed a lot of money. And on the spending side, they were spending a lot of money. Nobody questioned them. And on the revenue side, we had a tax cut, so we had reduced revenue. So we had budget deficit on all those years from 2002 onwards. And then in 2008, mid-2008, we had the financial meltdown. So then the government needed to step in. They needed to bail out some of the Wall Street companies. They also needed to bring Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac into conservatorship. So all this costed money to the government, and it was a legitimate expense because it was a crisis situation. So then in 2009, Barack Obama took over, Then he was trying to fix the economy because of the financial meltdown. We were losing 500 to 600,000 jobs a month from the first 6 months of the Obama presidency. So he was spending a lot of money to basically beef up the economy. And he also passed a bill that included a tax cut because he wanted to stimulate the economy. So then those 8 years also we had spending that was not reined in, and we had a tax cut from the Bush side as well as the limited tax cut from the Obama budget bill as well. So then when Obama left office, Trump took over. And when Trump took over, he also passed again a tax cut. So the revenue got reduced. There was no corresponding cut in the spending. So the deficit was exploding on Trump's presidency as well. And then in 2020, and we had COVID, again, the government needed to spend more money because it's a legitimate purpose. They wanted to take care of the people, which is legitimate. And so they spent a lot of money. There was a lot of stimulus, and there was no tax increase or anything like that to actually get more revenue. And both Trump and Biden spent money as a stimulus to basically stimulate the economy and to stabilize the economy and to create more jobs. So that's where we are now at the end of the Biden presidency, where we have a huge deficit and a huge, humongous debt. And now, the reason I'm saying all this is because during these years, Republicans were also in control of Congress. Republicans were also in control of the White House. They were also in control of the Senate. They did not rein in on spending. They did not look at adding more revenue to come to some kind of a sanity in the budget deficit number. So both parties are equally responsible for this current scenario. So that is why I would like both parties, both these campaigns, to come up with some strong, fiscally sound policies and to come up with a plan to say that this is what we are planning to do. This is how we are planning to give our new programs, but this is how we are going to actually get more revenue so that we will work towards a budget, a balanced budget kind of a scenario. And they don't have to look too far. They can look at the Clinton model. Any of these things would require some kind of a compromise on the tax increases for the rich and some kind of a compromise on the spending. And yes, you have to cut spending on the defense, but you also need to look at cutting some of the social programs, not necessarily every social program. As I mentioned, that the child tax credit is a very good program. I would not want anyone to cut that, but there are some programs that you can still cut, which are not defense related. But of course, defense also needs to be touched. I would like to see some kind of a policy and some kind of a budget, a proposed budget from both these two parties before the election, so that the people will know exactly how they are going to handle the debt and the deficit crisis that we are in right now. So that is why I would like both parties to do that. And I know people from the left are going to criticize me and the people from the right are going to criticize me, but these are the facts. I have just enunciated everything from 1992 onwards up until now. So that's it from me today. I will come back with a different program tomorrow.